The church bells echoed through the morning mist, their sound carrying a kind of trembling hope inside the small chapel adorned with white lilies and flickering candles. A young woman stood before the mirror. Though she couldn't see her own reflection for 5 long years, Emma Blake had lived in darkness. The world had been nothing but echoes, scents, and textures beneath her fingertips. But today, she stood on the edge of a miracle. It was her wedding day, and by some twist of fate, also the day doctors said she might regain her sight. A week ago, a breakthrough surgery had promised her a chance to see again. Your vision will likely return gradually, the doctor had said, maybe in flashes. At first, light, colors, shadows, be patient. But Emma's heart didn't know how to wait for 5 years. She had imagined every face, every smile, every sunrise, and now, on the morning she was to say I do, her hands trembled as faint shapes began to flicker behind her eyelids. Light color movement. The world was returning. Before we continue this incredible journey of love, faith, and destiny, if you believe in kindness, miracles, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps us keep spreading stories that touch hearts and restore hope. Emma stood in silence as her bridesmaid helped her adjust her veil. The scent of roses filled the air. She could feel the delicate lace brushing against her skin, could hear her friends whispering how beautiful she looked. She smiled shyly, still unable to see them clearly. Only faint shapes in the light, but deep in her heart, she wasn't nervous about being blind. She was nervous about her groom, the man who had promised to love her no matter what. Even when she couldn't see his face, his name was Jack Sullivan. For months, he had written her letters, spoken to her softly in the evenings, and described the world to her as if it were poetry. The sky looks like melted gold tonight, he'd once said. If I could, I'd paint it for you. His voice had become her picture of safety. She had never seen him, but she knew his voice better than her own heartbeat. As the ceremony began, Emma took her father's arm and walked slowly down the aisle. The faint glow from stained glass windows painted the floor with ribbons of color. She could hear the gasps, the whispers, the awe of seeing a blind bride walking toward her destiny. And as she reached the altar, she heard that familiar voice, Jack's voice, steady and warm. You look beautiful, he said softly, and her eyes filled with tears. But something strange happened. Then a flicker of light crossed her vision, a sudden spark that made her heart skip. The outlines became clearer. The candles, the pews, the shapes of people. She could almost make out the priest's robe, the shimmer of her dress. Then, as Jack took her hands into his, she blinked, and for the first time in years, she saw the light was blinding, the colors overwhelming. Tears streamed down her face as she looked around. Every sight a miracle. The faces of friends blurred into beauty. The sunlight through the window burned gold. She turned toward the man in front of her, the man she was about to marry, and her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't Jack. The face she saw was not the one she had imagined. The man standing before her was older, his eyes weary, his smile uncertain. His hair was streaked with gray, his suit slightly loose. Emma froze. The church seemed to tilt around her. Who? She whispered. Though the word barely left her lips, her vision flickered again, adjusting to light, trying to make sense of it, but the truth was already clear. The man she was marrying was not the voice she had fallen in love with. He wasn't the one who had described sunsets or held her hands in darkness. Panic rose in her chest, but she couldn't make a scene. Not here, not. Now the ceremony went on, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear the priest's words. When the vows ended and everyone applauded, Emma forced a trembling smile. Cameras flashed. She clung to the man beside her, numb and confused. The world was bright again, but everything felt wrong. At the reception, her head spun as guests congratulated them. She studied the man called Jack Sullivan, but he barely looked at her. His eyes carried guilt, not love. His hand was cold. He avoided her gaze, and then she saw something that shattered her. A photo on the gift table. In the picture, the same man stood beside a younger man who looked hauntingly familiar. That younger face, that was the voice she'd known. That was her. Jack. Her heart stopped. The truth hit her like thunder. The man she'd fallen in love with wasn't her groom. It was his brother. Tears burned her eyes as memories rushed back. The letters, the late-night phone calls, the comfort during hospital nights. They hadn't been written by the man she had married, but by someone else entirely, someone who had loved her from afar but never dared tell her the truth. Emma excused herself and ran outside, gasping for air. The sunlight hurt her eyes. But she didn't care. She needed answers. Behind her, the church doors opened quietly. Soft voice spoke, the same voice she'd memorized in her soul. Emma. She turned, her vision still blurry with tears, and there he was. The real Jack Sullivan. He stood a few feet away, wearing a simple black suit, his expression caught between pain and love. Her heart broke all over again. He walked closer, voice trembling. I never wanted this to happen. It was supposed to be me. I was the one who wrote to you, who sat with you through the surgery, who... His voice cracked. But my brother, Michael, he loved you too. He met you first, and when the accident happened, when you lost your sight, he stayed. I couldn't take that from him. Emma's breath trembled as she tried to understand. Jack's eyes glistened with regret. He promised to care for you, to protect you, and when you agreed to marry him, I thought, maybe love wasn't about being seen. Maybe it was about letting go. Her knees weakened. So you lied to me, she whispered. Jack shook his head. No, I loved you too much to ruin your peace. He was good to you. He was there when I wasn't brave enough to fight for you. I just wanted you to be happy, even if it wasn't with me. The silence between them stretched, filled only by the sound of the wind and distant laughter from the hall. Emma closed her eyes, the truth burning deep. The man she had dreamed of wasn't her husband, and the man who loved her had given up everything to keep her safe that night. She couldn't sleep, her vision now clear. She looked at the man lying beside her, Michael, and saw kindness mixed with guilt. He had loved her, yes, but his silence had built their marriage on a lie. The next morning, Emma quietly packed her things. She couldn't live with a heart divided between truth and obligation. Days turned into weeks. She stayed at her mother's old cottage by the lake, trying to adjust to this new world of sight and loss. Every sunrise she saw felt like both a gift and a wound. But sometimes, when the evening came, she would hear Jack's voice in her mind, the voice that had painted her darkness with hope. One afternoon, as rain fell softly against the window, there was a knock. On the door, she opened it to find Jack standing there, soaked but smiling faintly. He looked tired, but his eyes carried something she hadn't seen before. Peace. I came to return something, he said, pulling out an old crumpled letter. You once told me you wished you could see the person who made you believe in love again. Well, here I am. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She took the letter, the same one that had carried her through her darkest nights. Why now? She asked softly. Jack's gaze met hers, steady and full of ache. Because love shouldn't live in shadows, and you deserve to see it in the light in that moment. Emma understood. Sometimes love isn't about the one who stands beside you at the altar, but the one who stands beside you in your pain, quietly holding your world together. She stepped closer, her heart trembling. I see you now, Jack, she whispered. I finally see you, and for the first time since regaining her sight, the world didn't just look beautiful, it felt beautiful. They didn't rush into promises. There was no grand confession, no instant happily ever after, just two souls standing in the rain, finally honest with each other. Weeks later, Emma returned to the city. She began volunteering at the same hospital where she had once prayed for light. She started helping other patients facing blindness, sharing her story of loss, truth, and rediscovery. And sometimes when she walked through the garden, she'd find Jack waiting, not as a rescuer, but as a companion. Love had found its way back to her quietly and completely, not through sight, but through understanding. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more true and emotional stories that remind the world love always finds its way back. And before we end, I have one special request for you. Comment below, would you forgive someone who lied to protect your heart? Because sometimes forgiveness isn't the end of a story, it's where real love begins.